Podcaster. I'm Will Carey, your host. I appreciate your listenership. I'm still in the beginning stages of doing a show, and I'm late to the game, but I really enjoy sitting here on this microphone, and it's in a $13 boom arm that you can get on Amazon. But there's something kind of nice about just sitting in a room by myself talking. Normally I need someone an audience that I can react to, but there's something just kind of nice about doing these intros, and then the kind of conversations I've been having with people I know. Some people that, frankly, I've known for a while and haven't really had any sort of meaningful or in-depth conversation with. Being a comedian in New York, I imagine a lot of people know what that is, but then there's probably people who might only have an idea, or maybe they want to be here. There's a certain level of, even though you're with a ton of people, it can still be kind of isolating at times. And you know a lot of people, but you don't really know a lot of people. And part of doing this show, I'm starting to find, has allowed me to kind of meet people and get and know them in a different way, as opposed to just seeing them on stage or talking to them at a show. On the show today, this is actually the first time I interviewed two people at once. On the show today, I have comedians Alexis Guerreros and Christian Polanco. Now, these are two guys. They're a bit further along in their careers than I am. They do a lot more clubs than I do. I do some clubs. I'm trying to get into more. And we talk a bit about how comedy comes about for them, because Alexis got into comedy later on in life than maybe some of the other people that I know or have talked to. And Christian, I sort of knew, but didn't really know all that well. And it's kind of funny how me and Alexis kind of started to have a friendship was actually over soccer. The local team for Major League Soccer in New York City that we both cheer for is New York City Football Club, and I happened to be on Facebook and see that he was wearing a New York City FC Football Club jersey, and I was like, oh, dude, I love them too. Because I used to play soccer when I was a kid, and then I kind of got out of it because I never had a good experience being on a team. Never really was on a team with anyone that I kind of liked or with friends. So I got out of it for a really long time. And then my old roommate and I, in 2014, started watching the World Cup, and it kind of reignited my excitement for the game again. And I was really excited to talk to Alexis and to Christian, because they're both big soccer fans as well. And real quick, I want to plug this before we move into the interview. Alexis and Christian have a YouTube channel called Cooligans TV, where they talk about a lot of different soccer-related happenings, and not just America. If you follow English Premier League or Spain, they have stuff for you, and they're incredibly funny, and they know a lot about the sport. So I would encourage you to check them out, and let's go to my chat right now with the Cooligans, Alexis Guerreros, and Christian Polanco, and I'll talk to you afterwards. Yeah, you guys have clearly done this before, I think. Because, podcaster is just a normal thing to have it in the comedy resume nowadays, right?
Are we recording already?
Yeah. I ease into it.
Oh, okay,
My only model for podcasting is like This American Life and WTF.
Oh, okay.
So they all seem to like ease into it.
Yeah. And it's still, the theme is going to be things that we've struggled with, or yeah, that's like something I would want to talk about because I have a lot of problems.
Oh, okay, cool.
I have struggles trying to balance like this career and this life,
Yeah.
but it's
Really,
it's,
you're a New York City comedian? That's weird. We're
That's
doing
odd.
just fine.
Struggling?
Yeah.
I've never struggled.
Yeah,
Never-
no, everyone-
Never
every-
heard of it.
Yeah.
yeah, it just doesn't happen.
I saw a documentary about it pop up on my Netflix. Didn't watch it. Didn't want to be disturbed.
Yeah, everything was going just fine. So Alexis Guerreros and
Yeah.
Christian
Polanco.
Polanco.
That's it.
I
Probably the
d-
easiest name to say out of all of them, and you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you guys like Alexis, I feel like I've only started talking to like relatively recently because I was listening to the New York City Fan podcast and I saw that you were on it. And I was like,
Oh,
shit!
yeah. That was a fun podcast.
Yeah, I was because I thought I'd seen a picture of you on Facebook and was like, is he wearing a soccer jersey?
Yeah.
I like that soccer. I have that too, because
I'm surprised you were able to find a picture of Alexis without a soccer jersey.
Yeah.
or without a shirt without a pizza stain.
My, as my wife calls it, my summer uniform is my throwback Arsenal jersey.
oh yeah,
And like blue shorts. I love that.
yeah,
outfit.
that's the good way to go. Good way to go because I didn't. I'll be honest. I played soccer as a kid, and I never really. I got back into it heavily watching the World Cup in 2014,
Oh,
and then
wow,
when I saw
cool.
that there were other people in the comedy community that liked soccer too, I felt like it was okay to like it.
Yeah.
Because for like the longest time, I thought that you couldn't be in the arts and also like sports either. Were you guys always sports? Were the two of you both sports guys growing up, or were you more like an art type?
I mean, for me, I guess no one in my family really liked any sports besides the Yankees. And I don't mean baseball. I mean the Yankees. The entire island of Cuba are Yankee fans. So I grew up, I'm half Cuban, half Uruguayan. My Uruguayan side are massive Peñarol fans, which is one of the two big teams in Uruguay. They're massive fans. I didn't grow up with that side of the family, so I didn't know anything about sports. But I noticed growing up, everyone was like wearing Knicks, Giants, Jets. And it was my way of sort of assimilating into like, American life was to learn about how to communicate with these other kids with sports. And it was hard because I had to teach myself everything about every sport besides the Yankees. I had to teach myself everything. So American football took a while. There's a lot of rules in that. When you think you know everything, somebody gets pushed out of bounds and you're like, there's like 13 new rules there I never heard of.
If you haven't picked up on it yet, Alexis definitely grew up without a dad.
Yeah, yeah. Central theme of much of my life.
Oh yeah.
And apparently, I'm good enough friends with Christian for him to mock me for it.
I mean,
I think
well,
anyone can, to be honest.
it's either laughing or crying for
Yeah.
a lot of
And
things,
I'll
right?
probably do both on this podcast.
Yeah, that's definitely how I am. I saw my mom recently showed me a video from when I was like a year old, and I was like pretending to make soup with a pot, and my dad says, "Oh, you got a soup pot and a play vacuum cleaner. Do you think your mom wanted a girl?" And
Nice.
that's sort of like probably where it started.
There's a few moments where I think to myself, I'm better off having grown up without a dad. That was one of them just now when I heard that.
I'm glad I could help you with that. So
Basketball, the Knicks, and then baseball. I mean, I knew a lot about, but like picking teams was also big. Like I was a little bit of a Vikings fan for a while before one of my friends was like, "You should pick a local team because you're never going to see the Vikings."
Why were you a Vikings fan?
I can't remember who their quarterback was, but I just remember thinking like that they were a fun team to watch. I remember there was one play where everyone thought there was a fumble in the pile, and it was the first game I ever like clicked on and watched. And someone else had run away with the ball, but everyone else thought it was under a pile of humans. And the guy was standing in the end zone just like dancing. And the referees looked up and they were like, "Oh no!" And they blew touchdown. And like he tricked everyone. So I was like, "Oh, that seems like a fun team." And like 4 games in, I'm like, "Who are these people? Why am I a fan of a team from Minnesota?" So I wasn't really a fan, but I focused on them. And my friend was like, "Pick a local team. Jets or Giants. We have a lot of teams here." So I was like, "Oh, cool. I'll pick the Giants." I like their jersey, and I like the fact that it said the Giants across as opposed to just like the stuff the Jets had. So I was like, "Yeah, I was really into it." And soccer was something I became a fan of in the sort of mid-'90s, right around the first World Cup in the U.S.
Yeah.
I had heard a lot about soccer from my father's side of the family, who we had a cousin that lived in the city and then later on in Long Island who loved soccer.
Yeah.
So I heard a lot about it through that. Like I knew who Maradona was and some of these famous players. But I mean, I wouldn't say I didn't care. I just say I probably didn't know enough. I couldn't really find it on TV, so I was like, it doesn't really. None of my other friends talked about it, so I really didn't care.
Right.
But I always knew about it, and then when that World Cup came, a switch happened, and I didn't care if anybody liked it or not. I was just a soccer-aholic.
Yeah, because that was like that event. Maybe other than the original Cosmos in like the 70s was like what kind of got the sport into the American consciousness again. Because like I was exposed to it. I never really watched it on TV, but I was playing it when I was a kid because my mother didn't want me playing American football for fear of getting hurt. But I think you can get hurt in soccer a lot
just
worse.
As bad, I would say.
Just as bad if you watch someone get headbutted in the eye.
Yeah.
So sports for you were a way of connecting with other people.
Yeah, it was like a part of my American assimilation because are your parents immigrants or?
No.
All right, so like for me, when you go home, you're not in America. You're in whatever country they're from. You know, like the culture is of that kind. It literally, my house growing up was like Little Havana.
Right.
You know, so
when people were like, "Go back to Cuba," you were like, "All right, I'm just going 2 blocks away."
Yeah, I'm gonna make a sandwich when I get there.
Exactly. So
there was no it was hard for me to like leave that and all of a sudden in grammar school be American. And I mean, not American like I don't love America. So if any Red Staters are listening, don't email me.
So you're an immigrant. You immigrate from.
I'm born in this country.
You're born in the
That's
States.
What the paperwork says. That's what I'm sticking to.
Okay.
But no, like my sister and myself are first generation born here.
Okay.
But when we went home, especially when we were kids, everyone spoke Spanish, and we ate Cuban food, and we lived by Cuban rules, meaning primarily my mother could hit me whenever she wanted. Things like that. Like it wasn't very American. Like I would turn on and watch TV and see like Growing Pains and Full House and think, my house is nothing like that.
Right.
Like how come the dad hasn't left? How come the mother hasn't hit the kid yet? Like none of that made sense to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so my way of being able to relate to other kids growing up, the Portuguese kids I got along with just fine. Puerto Rican and Dominican kids I got along with fine. But like the white kids, there was no
common ground.
Yeah, there wasn't any. Sports became an easy one, especially when you're a kid.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
Did you see that game yesterday? And I would be like, yeah. I remember I had such an early curfew that I couldn't watch Monday Night Football, but I had a little portable TV, one of those like little old school tiny ones where like a third of the actual machine is the TV. The rest of it is like. So I had this.
Like the old Game Boy.
Yeah, it was like a tiny version of the Game Boy. I used to watch Monday Night Football with pillows around me so my mother couldn't hear it, so that I would know what to talk about the next day in school.
Wow, most kids usually did that with porn, but no, you did it with.
I did it with sports. And then later on, I put pillows around a sandwich, and here I am.
Is any of this familiar to you too, Christian?
Not as much the assimilating part.
Because you didn't give a damn.
No, I grew up with sports obsessively. I played sports like a maniac.
But you also had older brothers, right?
I did. I have one older brother. My older brother, he's a professional handball player.
Oh, really?
So he's been playing.
Always sounds like a joke when you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like a sexual euphemism.
Born and raised in New York?
Yeah, I was born in New York. My brother and both my parents were born in Dominican Republic.
Okay.
So they came here. My brother was, I believe, 6 years old when he came here. So he's basically grew up here. And so for me, I just sort of mimicked him. He played handball. I played handball. Obsessed with sport. He's been playing since he was about 9 years old. And I've just been going crazy with sports. I played a lot of handball, baseball, and basketball. Basketball was the one I really stuck to.
Yeah, that I played basketball for a couple of years because when you're my height, it's required.
Well, yeah, they force you.
It's like being in the army if you're from Israel. You know.
Right. Yeah.
That's right.
So your brother kind of.
I was offensive lineman because of my size. They were like, "Well, people are gonna have trouble getting around you." So.
Exactly. They're just looking at you and like center.
Yeah. I wish that wasn't true.
Yeah. So you have one brother.
One older brother and 2 parents who are still around.
Oh, very nice. That's good for you.
I joke around for no reason. It's like whatever. Your dad was probably terrible. I have a terrible dad. But he never left.
We get along with that. My dad was just roaming and terrible. Your dad is more domestic and terrible.
Yeah.
Was
I think
there?
your parents were at that show we did, right? You had family at that show, no?
No. My girlfriend's family was there.
Oh, that was your girlfriend's family.
Yeah, My family's from Maryland.
Oh, okay.
That's where they still are. Mom and dad aren't together anymore, but
Okay.
that's where they are. But they got divorced like later when I was older.
After you left.
No, I was still in college by the time they finally got divorced. But it was started like when I was still living in my mom's house. And
Is that easier to handle when you're older?
I feel like that would be
You-
harder.
you have like a different it's weird because I was 16, so I was like an adult and kind of a child in the same way, and I think most comics probably are not the most emotionally mature people throughout their lives maybe. So I understood why it was happening, and I knew why it was happening, so it wasn't so much it wasn't really confusion, it was just anger at the situation.
Yeah.
And then you learn more, and then I've learned more as the years have gone. So
Who were you more
it's
mad
becoming
at
even
initially, mom or dad?
You're really deep diving in
at
here.
the time my dad, because he flew to he left on Christmas Day. That's why.
Ooh, tough
that's a-
one.
that-
That one
that's
makes it hard to remember.
Yeah, and hard to forget. You mean?
Yeah, hard to forget.
Yeah, especially that specific
Yeah, it's
day.
going to be hard for me to forget it. Easy for me to remember.
Right.
What you just said. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I did the same. My parents, they're still together, but
Mhm.
just
Where's-
basically Catholic, holding on to some fear that you're not supposed to be divorced, and
So there's tension.
and they're continuously. Yeah, it is never left. And so, when I was younger, always sided with mom.
Mm-hmm.
Made no sense. I was just like my dad, just being an idiot. Never sided with him. And
Yeah.
then the older I got, I started to understand like, it's both. They're both responsible.
Right. There's faults on
Yeah,
both
exactly,
sides, and you were maybe told one person's side of the story and didn't hear the other side.
Yeah.
And then
When I think of
I'm trying to reconcile that.
when I think back on it, I realized my dad never did a thing that is pretty common. He never badmouthed my mother to me.
Right.
My mother.
That's actually pretty
It's surprising.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
that's
you usually
that's good. That's
the
a
way
sign
but
of
he was,
goes.
but he would be visibly terrible to my mother. He
Right.
just never in private said like your mom is
Action's bad, words
Action-
good. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
odd duality
Yeah,
to my
yeah.
dad.
Real paradox, that one.
yeah.
I grew up thinking no one had a dad at home. I was one of those kids.
Sure.
And then I remember in second grade, I was like, my buddy's dad picked him up from school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
No.
what's he in town? You know? Is he swinging by? And my buddy was like, what's wrong with you? My dad picks me up every day. And I was like, how's it get back to South Florida? I assumed everyone's dad lived in South Florida like mine. And I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. And he was like, my dad lives with me. And I was like, that's weird, dude. You're weird. And then I like made fun of him to other people. And people were like, you're the weird one. And one of
you're
the
the
guy
weird
who
one.
I remember being like the really sad one, he always looked, I don't know why I remember him this way. He was second grade, but I remember him as having a mustache and like a big shaggy hair. There's a character who's been on 1,000 TV shows that he looks exactly like in my brain, and I can't remember the actor's name. He played the Super on Friends.
Mm-hmm.
He was also on
Oh.
the George Carlin show.
Yeah,
Big
I know
mustache.
exactly who you're talking about. He has long, shaggy hair and a big
Big
mustache.
He looks like a trucker, like in every show. That's exactly how I picture this kid, and he couldn't have been. He was in second grade. He couldn't look like this. He couldn't look like a weathered bar guy, like a regular bar.
Right.
But I remember him going, I don't have a dad either. And I remember we all used to not like this kid because he was like sad. He was like crying every 15 seconds. And I'm like, oh my God, the only one who has anything in common with me is that one. I was like, I better not be that way. And that's when I figured out that I lived a different life than most of the kids. But I mean, later on, everyone I know's parents got divorced.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and were you guys? Did you have to wrestle with that at all?
Were you on the wrestling team?
Yeah, and Alexis in one corner, the other corner, his emotions. No, I never had to. It's weird because I've never like talked to a therapist or anything, but I have a friend who's a therapist.
Yeah.
And one day I was saying, it was like a mutual friend, and one day I was saying to them that I think emotions are a waste of time.
Right.
Like I will be upset about something, but I'm not going to be. I would never, like if you did something bad towards me,
Mm-hmm.
I would never be like, oh, I'm upset that you did that, and I don't know why you did that, and I would like an explanation. I would never do that. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to move on with my life. Like, you're not someone I'm going to fuck with ever again.
Yeah, that's what I did. I just kind of, if at the first sign of conflict or some sort of disrespect, I just peace out.
Oh, do you?
It's just
See, I'm the other way. Like, I'm
way.
pretty big on disrespect. Like, I will voice my opinion to you if I think this was out of character and I want to maintain your friendship. I'm also pretty big on confrontation. I'm not afraid of it. But I'm not someone who's like, oh, I'm mad at that person and I'm going to be mad. I'll hold a grudge, but I'd be like, I don't talk to, like, if I don't like someone, I don't talk to them. I don't need to have friends that I don't care about.
It sounds like you have the emotional spectrum of R2D2.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's a big issue in my marriage.
He's very defined in his relationships with people.
If I didn't like Christian,
yeah,
and he did something that I thought was out of his character, I wouldn't care. I'd be like,
right. But if your friend,
yeah, but if it's a friend, I'd be like, hey, dude, you fucked up when you did. Some people wouldn't do that. They would like hold on to it and be like, I'm gonna be passive, and then be like, well, I was very upset. That's why I said something nasty to you. I would never do that. I'd get it out right away, put it right out on the table. That's why, my in-laws don't like me too much sometimes because I'm very open and forward. But also, like, I've always
they probably interpret it as rude.
Yeah, because the rest
I think
of them are like, well, we don't say anything. Why is he talking about this? Yeah. But like, that's what the dad thing. What helped me so much with that was, I didn't hold on, and I'm sure somewhere subconsciously I have. I'm not saying I'm superhuman or not human. I'm just saying. I mean, you guys could say I'm superhuman. All I would say is that
we're not going to say that.
No one's going to say it. I was waiting and no one said it. I just don't think I held on to those emotions. I think I realized pretty early, I live in Newark. No one else does because I was going to like Catholic school outside of Newark because I kept getting in trouble in Newark. Like, I live in Newark. Everyone else lives in nicer neighborhoods. Like, people drive nicer cars than my family. People get bigger gifts at Christmas. I knew right away when I was young. I'm like, okay, I live differently than everyone else here. And I never looked at it as like, well, that sucks and why. I was just like, look, my family came from another country. This is part of us getting to their level.
Right.
I was more upset that people were drinking milk with dinner. And I'm like, why are you people doing that? That was weird to me. Like, those Americans. I would never worried about like the fact that I grew up without a dad. I would say it bothers me more now that I know more about the situation.
Yeah.
Like when you're a kid, you're just like, no, dad, that's fine, move on. I had my grandfather who I love dearly, so I was like, whatever,
Yeah, I can relate to that because I completely lost my train of thought. No, I understand, but what you're saying makes sense because I think a lot of people would interpret someone who's really up forward as being as rude.
Right. I think it's the opposite. I think it's the highest level of respect.
Yeah, and I actually agree with you. It's easier because that way you deal with it now instead of letting it fester and causing problems later. But I think a lot of people they're either afraid to do that or they're afraid of how they're going to be perceived by the other person.
There's so much there can be so much consequence to like
very much so
to confronting people about things because you don't know how they're going to respond. Sometimes when people meet people that are that forward about like, hey, let's resolve this dispute like immediately, then they see it as like, oh, they're like, it's like some weird threat, or sometimes those people feel like you're actually being shitty to them.
Yeah, I've had someone say like, you're not respecting my ability or my need to feel upset. And I was like, what do you want me to do? Let you sit here like a baby for the next 20 minutes and pout? I've lost friends because of it, I've lost friends. I've lost a lot of friends because of it because I'm upfront. I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time, and I don't want to waste your time.
Yeah.
Like, I've said this to my wife when I first met. If you ever ask me one of those like sitcom questions, do I look fat in this? If you do, I'm going to say it because I'd rather I tell you than someone else. That's with my friends, with everyone. I'd rather you hear from me than anyone else, And that's obviously, we've been together 15 years, so we figured it out. But yeah, at first it was like weird. Like she cut her hair one day and she was like, do you like it? And I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. No, I still love you. I'm not going to divorce you or get it. I mean, at that point, break up with you. But I don't like that haircut.
Grounds for divorce. I don't see why.
Yeah.
No one would even be mad at you.
Italian chick from Jersey.
Is that who your wife is?
Yeah. She's from Secaucus, originally from Hoboken, Jersey City. I mean, I would lie to you if I told you she didn't threaten to throw shit at my face when we first met. But I love that about her. I need passion. I also need someone like her who will call me on my shit right away.
Yeah.
And that comes from my family. My family is the first to, you walk in and right away they'll be like, yeah, you were being a shithead before. And I need that. I need that everywhere in my life. I don't like friends that pussyfoot. That's why I like Polanco.
Yeah.
He'll be the first one to tell you if I was being. He'll soft step. He's kind of a baby when it comes to that.
Yeah, but he asked me if he looks fat and stuff, and I get really mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes even without me asking.
Yeah.
So I think
Well, it's good.
my
It's
hat
good
really
to.
Christian.
It's
Really?
good to have that rapport because I agree with you. I need that too. My girlfriend is very straightforward, and
That's awesome.
The first couple of times, I think I was a little taken aback by it.
Yeah.
But I'm
You
starting.
seem like a reserved dude.
I'm really reserved. Like I'm
Yeah.
diplomatic to like the nth degree. I'll say whatever's. My goal is to just get through the minefield without cause the minefield of life without causing too much disturbances.
Dude,
but
you would have been great in corporate America.
You
That's-
know,
that's
I-
the attitude to have. In
That's
corporate
interesting because
America.
I think
Yeah.
it's very common, especially with like
Big guys,
tall
right?
dudes,
Yes,
big
thank
guys.
you, yeah.
You're very
exactly
very
'cause if I-
conscious of like you don't want to make people uncomfortable because you know you could be scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could be scary. Like if
It's like
I'm
the big
walking
black guy
behind,
effect.
right? If I'm walking behind you at 2 a.m. in the subway, even though you don't know who I am, I come off as very scary, and I'm always conscious of that. Like I don't.
Wear
I've
more
never fought.
Wear
I've
more
never,
cardigans.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
safe.
I thought you were gonna say we're more scared of you than you are of us. That's what you were gonna say.
like I'm an animal in the
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
rain in the
like-
in the
it's like, where's he going
rainforest
with this
in the
one?
rainforest.
You do, but you also have like a very affable demeanor. So even for a big guy, I mean,
Mhm.
which it sucks when you're that tall. Like people are intimidated at you immediately. Like I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie to you, I'd be afraid to get a hug from you because you look like you'd squeeze the being out of me. You know what I mean? But that's just because you're like a
'Cause-
Great Dane, and you know what I mean. You don't
Yeah.
know how big you are. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
My wife has told me my resting face is like wants to fight. And I was like, I don't see that at all. Like right now I'm smiling because we're having a great conversation. But like,
Yeah.
I very rarely smile when I'm not,
Yeah.
amongst like good people or friends.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's when I feel like I can be comfortable, and it's like there's only like a few people I feel like I can be that open with. Otherwise, my natural slate is just trying to be as like neutral as possible, so that
Yeah.
I'm not provoking anything. Because if I get into a fight and the police show up, even if I'm right, I'm the one getting arrested.
Yeah, because you're probably the most threatening one. Just
Yeah, because
based on
I'm the
size,
one.
yeah.
I look like the threat.
Yeah.
So
They think you're the
confrontation.
bouncer. They're like, so.
Yeah,
What was the
dude,
argument here?
I
They
used
didn't
to
have
work the
IDs?
door. I used to work the door at the most viewed thing I've ever done in comedy in New York is almost get into a fight with someone at a Rich Voss show.
That's
Was it
Rich Voss? Yeah, that's
No, not
awesome. Was it Bonnie?
some.
Was it
There
the
was some
daughter?
guy who was some guy was just a drunk, obnoxious
Rich
like,
Voss fan.
Rich Voss fan, and
Yeah.
and he tried to start a fight with a bunch of other audience members, and then I tried to pull him away, and he grabbed me and he like pushed me, and I just held him at arm's length and said, "Don't do it, because he was like 58 years old. So what else? I would be the bad
Where
guy.
was
if
this?
I-
Was this in Maryland?
no, this was in New York. This was at the Laughing Devil, which is now the Standing Room in Long Island City.
Yeah. Was this the
Tiny
one that?
club.
Wait a minute. Wasn't there a video of this?
There is a video of it.
I
It's
think I
got like
saw this video.
yeah, it's got like 400,000 hits.
Yeah.
It's my
Wasn't this when
stand-up
the stage
channel
was
is like
all the way at the end.
all the way at the end.
And
Yeah.
Voss is like yelling about doing the show because it's in like a hallway.
Yep.
And then there's like a scuffle. That's you.
Yeah, that's
huh?
me.
That's
That's me.
wild.
in
I gotta
that
watch
vi-
that.
I've seen
That's
this video. It
that's
was
me
a
in that video.
I never walked into the Laughing Devil until the guys from the stand owned it.
Right.
So the only image I had in my head was of that video.
That was of that video. Yeah.
And I kept thinking it was a curtained off section of a restaurant because it looks very odd in that video. It looks like there's a curtain
Yeah.
along the wall. It's a very odd space at that point. It was like, now it's much more beautiful that they fixed it up, but then it was
yeah.
very
the,
awkward.
Yeah.
kind
The
of
decor
space.
is a lot, and it was hard to. It was hard to play to the entire audience because, like the room, the way a comedy room is set up, it. You can do it in a way where it's going to be a much better show, or you can do it in a way where it's going to be a difficult show.
Yeah.
And when you're at the end of a 20-foot long room, you can only play to like the first 3 tables.
Yeah.
Everyone else would just tune out. 'Cause that
It's a real Hofstadter room.
yeah. So since we're kind of on the subject of comedy right now, I kind of want to know, because Alexis, I know you were married
Still am.
You were married and
Yeah.
before you started doing stand-up, right?
Yeah. I've said before on podcasts that my wife met a skinny kid in college, married a slightly overweight executive, and now she's married to a fat comedian.
Is that what you were an executive before?
Yeah, I worked for the corporate division of a very large company.
What was that job?
I managed all of the sales teams in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. All the office, it was office supplies, all the business-to-business sales. It was tough. It was terrible. It was great money.
Yeah.
But the one thing I take away from all of it is that I didn't feel fulfilled. And the cool thing was my wife was right on board, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I had planned to, like, make a lot of money, which I was making. So I planned to save a lot of it and get out of it. And I thought I was going to buy, like, some type of venue where people could do comedy. I always wanted to be involved in comedy. I always wanted to be a comedian.
Right.
But then the economy led me to lose that job.
The economy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that damn economy.
Mhm.
God bless that recession.
Yeah. And how old were you when that
I
happened?
was, what was this, 2008, so I was 27 years old.
Oh, okay.
And
so-
I'm 34 now. And I had never done stand-up. I did stand-up actually once when I was like 16.
Mhm.
I went to an open mic, and the guy was like, hey, you were great. You should come back. And I, like, snuck into
that
the
guy's
city,
important in every
Yeah.
comic's life.
And I had snuck into the city to do it. It was called, like, Bulldog. It had something to do with a bulldog that night. I forget what it was, but it was, like, a bunch of people that weren't funny, and I just went up there and was, like, shitty. But I was a kid, so people laughed at that.
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted to do it. My wife, I had negotiated an 18-month severance package. So my wife was like, you're getting paid to not work for the first time since you're 12. When I met her, I was working 7 days a week. So she was like, why don't you just do what you love for the next 18 months? And I was like, all right, I want to do stand-up. She's like, yeah, I knew you were going to say that. And I never looked back. Financially, I've looked back a lot.
I thought you were
but-
going to say sleep in a bed of sandwiches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I have a new bucket list item. How
Perfect.
did I not think of that before? Is it semolina bread? Is it Portuguese rolls? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered now, and I'm gonna have a tough time maintaining composure on the rest
We
of
can
this
sort out
podcast.
the details later.
Perfect.
Holy
I like it. How about you, Christian? What's the moment that gets you into comedy? So if I understand, you're doing sports. You're doing team sports.
No, actually,
Living in New York.
I think never did team sports. I was always
Oh.
too thin, right? I was always very skinny. So I was
Just
good at
keep rubbing it
sports. No, too skinny. I was, I wasn't particularly proud of it. I think very, very skinny people and fat people share something where people are constantly concerned about their weight.
Yeah.
So that happened to me a lot. So
So you did like a lot of pickup?
yeah, I played pretty much every day, but I was always afraid of trying out and not making the team because I felt I was like just not good enough, and I felt like I was too small. So I had the mentality like if you don't try, you'll never fail, and I lived my life very sort of cautiously and safely that way,
Mhm.
never allowing my ego to be hurt. And comedy was Go ahead.
That's really fascinating. Like living
That is very fascinating.
living in a way where your ego is never hurt. I think that's why that kept me from not dating for several years. Just the idea of
Sure.
not wanting to get hurt. And I think a lot of people live
But
with
we're all
that.
in comedy where it's nothing but rejection.
Yeah.
Every minute of the day. It's so amazing. This is like people who didn't go out a lot in high school and then they go and like slut it up and do a bunch of drugs when they get into college, like that kind of This is our version of that. Like we wanted no rejection in our lives. And then you go and do comedy, which is like every second of that.
All
on stage.
rejection.
We're on a
But-
bender.
Yeah. So you're living in this way where you're guarding your heart and your feelings. So
Yeah, and I followed. So my brother. This is what I have this weird sort of youth where I was obsessed with sports, but my brother was a computer science major,
Mhm.
and I followed his footsteps, and I went to college for computer science. But again, I'm like good at sports. I do IT. That's what I did after college, and so I had all these different sides to me that I was like really into.
Okay.
And but one thing, and when I look at my grades in college for my major, for any computer class,
Right.
any programming class, always B's and C's. When I look at anything, when I look at my English, history, any creative writing class,
Yeah.
A's, straight A's. I was always more excited, but I never took that as a sign of like that's what I should be doing.
Right.
I was like, well,
Yeah.
computers, that's the thing. Who cares if I'm like not doing great in these classes? This is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
And I'm glad I did it because it allowed me to have a sense of stability.
Mhm.
But I was working for Sean John. I was like the senior network admin.
So you're like the guy who's like, the computers are down. Can you fix it?
Yeah. So I
Okay.
I
handled
can't get to the servers because of all the empty vodka bottles.
basically. It was the best. It was the coolest place to work at because I'm fixing computers and stuff, but then I'm like around rappers and it's like and it was a majority. Most of the employees were minorities, and I had never worked at a place like that. And it was like a
So
very.
everybody was late. No, I'm joking.
All right, yeah, that's a good joke. It was great. I had a blast, but I was there for 5 years, and 3 years into having that job, I started doing comedy. I was just like,
Where's the first place you go up?
well, the first open mic I did was Stand Up New York.
Did you say why you did stand up?
No, so this was
Okay.
no one ever told me. I never had anybody say, "Hey, you should do comedy."
Right.
Literally, well, I now I have people saying you should stop, but I don't. I don't have. I never had anybody saying I should.
It's just me.
But I was absolutely obsessed with comedy, especially in college. But in high school, I was obsessed with George Carlin. Constantly watching his specials.
What was your favorite one?
Complaints and Grievances.
That's a good one.
Probably my favorite one. That
Yeah.
was like the first one where I was like emotionally aware of what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then after that, watched every single special. Loved him. College, obsessed with joke writers, more polished. Mitch Hedberg, Todd Barry, Dimitri
love those
Martin.
Guys. Love all of them.
Going crazy, and I was just like, man, I in college I was obsessively listening to them, and I'm like, I want to do this. I could do this. And then I just started writing jokes, and I did the thing that they tell people where like if you tell people that you're gonna do a thing, now you're almost like obligated to do it because you don't want to disappoint them. So I just started I remember I told like this coworker, and I just said, hey man, I'm gonna do comedy one day. And I it felt good just to say it. I already felt like a comedian just by saying that and putting that out into the universe.
Yeah.
And then like I remember I was 24. Two things happened like emotionally to get me that jarred me into doing comedy. I went to Action Park. Remember Action Park?
The most dangerous
water park in the world. Almost.
Where's Action
This
Park?
is in New
It used to
Jersey.
be in Jackson, New Jersey, and there was one thing where they gave you a rolling, sort of boogie board. It was a plastic boogie board, and there was a huge slide that was like about maybe 7 stories tall, made out of concrete.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's super
if you
dangerous.
didn't hold up this bar, the brakes would jam, but you would flip out of it and you would roll down this concrete slide. It was the most dangerous way. People would literally see stretchers coming past you as you were there.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
So it was
none of it. It was all designed by kids who were like high on nerds and bubblegum. Like no one, not one engineer was like, I mean, maybe we should put a brace here. No one did that. Every piece of it looked like it was like a movie, like a Hotel for Dogs kind of movie, come to life. Action Park. It was. You could Google it. There's videos of people being horrifically injured at this place.
Oh my gosh.
But it's dangerous. Super fun park
because of that.
So
I bet that's why. Yeah.
So they have like a Tarzan swings and all these like fun things. They have a 100-foot slide, but they have like a cliff that you can jump off of into the water. And I remember I was always kind of afraid of heights, and so I was 24 years old. And I jumped, and the feeling was so liberating. It literally felt like I took a risk, right?
Yeah.
And then
landed in the cabin.
Literally, once I swam up, got out, I told a friend, I'm like, man, I want to go skydiving. I think that'd be cool. Then about 3 months later, people were like talking about it because I mentioned it to them, and everybody's like, nah, that's crazy. And then I was like, let me find out how to go skydiving. And I looked up all the information, found the place, booked it. I told family, I'm like, yo, you want to go? I'm going. And then my brother came with me, like 2 coworkers came, and the day I went skydiving and like just landed on the ground, I felt like my like every fear I could ever have left.
Your outlook changed.
I've done the scariest thing I could possibly do, and then a couple days later I signed up for a comedy class at Caroline's. And then
so you jumped out of the plane, you were ready,
and that's it. Yeah. And it literally shocked me into like finally like growing up and being like an adult, not being afraid of like stuff.
Oh, that's good, because those are lessons I need to learn now. Is the not being afraid of
Go skydiving,
things.
man.
I might have. That might be the way to do it, because I'm still.
Go to Action Park. You won't be afraid of dying anymore.
Yeah,
either.
because I've seen it.
Picturing you skydiving, because you have to go tandem. So basically, whoever you're gonna go with is gonna be super tiny, like a tiny person strapped to you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be adorable.
It looks like one of those like.
It's gonna be a reverse. It's like a reverse Baby Bjorn.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be like, I would help you, but I can't see around you.
Right.
Or imagine like Shaq is your guy, and for once you look like the smaller of the two. You know
That would be hysterical.
That'd be great for you.
If I have one goal in my career now, it's to be in a situation where I'm strapped to Shaq, and it's smaller. I don't know if anyone is listening that can make that happen. I want that to happen.
That's hilarious. Well, he's from my hometown, so maybe I can make a few phone calls.
Oh, thank you.
He's from Newark. I don't know.
Yeah.
Bill Bellamy's cousin, by the way. Speaking of comedy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Shaquille O'Neal.
Really?
Yeah, Bill Bellamy's cousin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You would think
Oh,
they would
that
be
makes
similar
sense.
in size.
No, I think Shaq stands out amongst a lot of people,
I-
including his family. His father is well, that's a stepfather, but his mother is very tiny as well.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. I used to be really into the Bulls in the '90s, and then I just kind of dropped off once
Breaks my
Jordan retired the second time.
Yeah.
Um,
What made you get into comedy?
I got into comedy. I was going to school. For studying acting at the time, and I always was like, I had started listening to Mitch Hedberg and Dimitri Martin, like absurd one-liners, because up until then the only way I knew stand-up comedy happened was like long-form storytellers like Cosby or and guys like that. Like, I was listening to Bill Cosby's himself. I would watch it a lot, and I was like, I cannot talk for that length of time. There's no way I could ever do that. But then I saw Dimitri Martin's Comedy Central Presents, and he was doing really short jokes, and I was like, oh, that counts. Because I have weird thoughts like that, and I was wanting to do it because I was getting parts in plays, but not like the really satisfying parts.
The lead. You want to be
like leads, or like even meaty like supporting roles. So I thought, well, I want to give this a shot, because I want to see if maybe this is it. Yeah. Because I was taking like the not getting cast as leads as maybe indication on my ability maybe for a little while, but and then when I did stand up, I got and by fluke did really terrible, bad Mitch Hedberg-esque jokes, but people laughed at it, and then I felt you get that first rush that goes through your whole body when you have a good set, and I was just like, ooh, I want more of this. And then I kept doing an open mic once a week every Sunday, and that became the thing that no one in the drama department was doing. Like, no one was doing stand up but me and one other guy.
Also, like, set you apart a little bit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. See, I never took a class. You didn't take a class either?
I was in college, and we had a comedy class that had like a section, a week or two on stand-up, and then like sketch and character stuff. But I never took like a stand-up class at a club. I
also never wrote jokes. I didn't know that about you, that you like wrote jokes ahead of time. I guess it sounds like you did as well.
Yeah,
I thought you were talking
when
about now. When I
started,
you write jokes now.
I'm surprised you write jokes. I've heard you talk. It's mostly reading out of the book. No, I never wrote. The first time I got up, well, not when I was a kid, it was just like rambling about like my dick, and people laughed because there's a 16-year-old talking about his dick.
Yeah.
And I made fun of like the WuTang members and what I would do if I could kick their asses. I remember that, and people were laughing like, "Who's WuTang?" Because I thought everyone knew who it was. It was a bunch of like drunk older white people in this place. But when I started doing stand-up, I was like, I remember I had a conversation with someone that I was like just got laid off, and I was like, I want to do stand-up, and they're like, what are you going to talk about? And I was like, I don't know, I'm always saying funny shit. I'm just going to go up there and talk and see what happens. And my buddy was like, that sounds like it's a mistake. He's like, I've seen enough stand-up to know that they make it sound like it's effortless, but it takes time.
It's really thought out.
I'll figure it out. I've always been that guy who's like, I'll figure it out. And I remember I went back to Newark to visit my mother, and I went to the pizza shop that I had spent a lot of time at as a kid, and the guy knew who I was. Like, the father and the son knew me. I grew up with the kid a little bit, and I walk in and I said, hey, blah, blah. And they're like, what are you doing now? And I remember I said, I'm a comedian, even though I'd never done it before. And I was like, yeah, I'm a comedian now. And he's like, I thought you were working in corporate America. What happened? I was like, I'm done with that. I'm going to be a comedian. He's like, good, because you never shut the fuck up. And I remember thinking, like, I want people to say more, like, stuff like that to me. Like, the feeling of saying I was a comedian and people's reactions to it were so cool that I was like, I'm going to do it no matter what. And I remember I took a week to, like, really do it. I signed up for a UCB class. I signed up for that before I ever did stand-up. But I wanted to do stand-up before that class started so that I could walk in as a comedian, quote-unquote.
Sure.
Right.
And I went up and I told a story about a friend's little brother who, like, I found out that a bunch of girls had made, like, a secret fan page for him on Facebook. And I was like, my buddy was like, that sucks. He's like, could you talk to him? Because he doesn't talk to me. He thinks you're cool. And I was like, yeah, I'll talk to him. And I was like, I pulled him aside. I was like, dude, let me smell your finger. Like, joking around because he, like, bangs all these. And my friend got upset. And he was like, yeah, that's funny. I was like, I'll say that. And I got some laughs because I kind of made it funny. But I was like, yeah, I need to write more. And I've only learned how to write, like, in the last, like, 3 years. I've been doing it for 7. Like, the first 4 years, I was like, I'm going to sit down and write. And if you look at my notebook, it's just, like, doodles and things I've already said.
Since I was obsessed with Todd Barry, Mitch, and Dimitri.
So you probably learned joke structure, maybe like traditional joke structure a little bit quicker.
Exactly.
Whereas like that more like punchy, bam, punchline.
Well,
whereas like Alexis is, you're maybe that I'm gonna have a conversation and the punchlines are in the story.
Yeah,
I was watching. My girlfriend wanted to see my first set that I did, and I can't watch. It's so hard. It's hard to watch because not only am I such a poor comedian, and I didn't do badly. I did very well just because I had a bunch of friends there and stuff.
Yeah,
but I was a different human being. I mean, like
you're 24.
My personality, my maturity, like the level, the kind of jokes I was doing were just they were so safe. They were like, I remember I used to get uncomfortable when jokes were too long. I'm like, I loved the resetting into a new joke because I felt like if I stayed in a joke too long, people would start getting like mad at me that I was like, there was too much either silence or, so I was very, very stuck to, that's why I wrote a bunch of jokes before I even took the class. The class didn't serve any other purpose than giving me the courage to get on stage. Having someone say, hey, this is when the show is. Right. We're going to practice for 8 weeks. And so that preparation helped me just overcome the fear.
Yeah.
Because it was, I mean, when I did my first set, my knees, I mean, I had to lock my legs in place because they were shaking so much. I felt like I was gonna pop right off the stage.
Really, I don't feel like were you a nervous person? Because I'm not at all.
I'm a nervous person, like in my everyday life, but
up, like in stand up, not
in stand up. My first couple of sets, I remember being, I remember just being nervous. I would not have anything to say,
or forgetting a line.
Forgetting jokes was hard for me.
Or
I used
forgetting
to watch
jokes.
Tape of myself 4 or 5 times before we went anywhere. Like if I was doing, like I did a couple bringers at New York Comedy Club. Those were like the first shows I ever did.
Yeah,
I did some too.
Clayton Fletcher.
Yeah. God, yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember Clayton. He came to Magoobies in Baltimore. I did a guest spot.
Magoobies. I was supposed to do that with Matty Betts, who's from Baltimore, or from that area.
Oh, I love Matt.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So I remember the first few. I wasn't nervous, but I remember thinking like, if I don't know what I'm saying, I'm just gonna start rambling on some other shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
I didn't want to do any crowd. Like I remember thinking to myself like, try to look like a professional comedian. So like I would lean on the mic stand, or like I leaned on the wall.
Yeah, I've seen comedians do that.
I don't know if you look closely.
Yeah.
But I did everything I thought like a professional. I never wanted someone to think like I wasn't good at it. You know what I mean? Even though I started, but I was more worried about like, will I remember the jokes? I knew I would remember what to say when I got in the jokes, but starting the jokes. And I never had a great memory that way. I remember everything I hear, but I don't remember what I'm supposed to say a lot. So, which is why I wasn't a very good actor ever. But I remember watching my own tape over and over and over again, thinking to myself, like, you better not forget this shit, you know? And I didn't want to write it on my hands because then when your friends see you afterwards, it looks like you didn't know what you were doing. I was very worried about that like level of professionalism, you know?
Yeah.
I'm trying to forget your jokes every day.
Yeah, well, you can't because they're so memorable.
Yeah.
They burn themselves in your brain. So.
I enjoy your guys' dynamic. It's fun to watch. So here's something I'm curious about, because I think you two both maybe do a bit more clubs than I do right now in New York and maybe and road work. I'm curious about the moment when you start to build like a little momentum in the New York scene, as opposed to just doing open mics or maybe only doing like a bar show once every couple of months. What was like the transition into not just being a pure open micer and
you know, it's funny,
bringer
we
show?
talked about this before. We both were slightly, I wouldn't say the word is envious, but that's the only word I could really use. We both thought each other were at different levels because we saw each other's photos on Facebook. So like before he and I were close friends, we knew who each other were from the scene. And I used to like not really like him too much because I'm like, why is this guy getting all these fucking shows and opportunities? And not just like in a jealous way, but I'm like, I've seen his set. It's not great. No, I'm kidding. That part is true. But like I was like, you know, I always looked at him as someone who was like a step or a level above where I was. And then I found out you thought the same from me. Or like, because you had heard my name a lot and you never see my set. Like that was like that.
You never really know where anyone else is in their career.
There are these like secret levels for everyone listening. There's like these levels that are invisible and aren't really real, but you know they're there.
Yeah. There's these attempts at traditional corporate ladder almost. Of achievement.
Right. Like, you know, when someone made middle management, there's no party.
Right.
You know they're not entry level anymore.
Exactly. And, have you ever had that thing where I have this sometimes where I won't see someone for a long time and then all of a sudden I'm reading their name on blogs and stuff. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good on them. Yeah,
it's tough. I would say, like, for me, it was a little different because I wanted to just do stand-up, and I still only want to do stand-up. Everything else I do is to get more stand-up. So I remember thinking to myself, like, when I started, I did all the hood rooms because that was the easiest to get booked on and you get paid really well.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing stand-up that I was very proud of, but it was, like, easy for me because it was just talking. It was making fun of people in the audience. That comes second nature to me. But I remember when I first went, like, and tried to really, like, build up momentum through the alt scene, it took a while and it was a long time. And I remember thinking to myself multiple times, like, why am I wasting my time here? I can get more work. But I wanted to be very proud of the jokes I was doing. And I wasn't proud of that set. So I just stayed in it. And then at some point, I didn't notice as it was happening, but at some point I'm like, okay, people who I respect are starting to talk to me as if I'm not a kid anymore. You know what I mean? It's sort of that feeling. And people whose names I knew were above me, I'm on a lot of shows with them. And I'm drawing the same type of laughter or reaction as they are. And maybe their jokes are better, maybe they're better at it, but I'm not struggling, you know what I mean? And I'm saying things that I'm kind of proud of. And I feel like my jokes are very well structured. And then at some point people start to compliment you a little bit and then you're like, okay, so other people now know. And the next thing I know, I'm building friendships with people who are way above where I am. And, you know, some of them are taking me on the road and stuff, which is cool because I remember saying, like, no one ever wants to take me on the road. Why hasn't anyone ever suggested? And I remember thinking at one point, like, maybe I'm too funny. Maybe that's it. Obviously, that's never the case.
It's seriously definitely not the case.
I mean, coming from you, that means a lot. But, like, you know, you think, like, maybe I'm too funny and they're afraid of bringing me on the road. And it's never that. It's just, like, comedy, the hardest part about comedy is I've met tons of people that are so talented but don't have the patience for it. And there was a podcast called It Could Be Better that was Nate Bargatze, Giannis Pappas, and typically it was like Chris Laker was like the third mic on that. And I remember they always, and this is Nate Bargatze, who now could write his own checks, and Giannis, who's doing a bunch of great stuff. At that time, I idolized those two so much because in the New York scene, they were everywhere. Anytime Mindy Tucker put up a photo album, they were in it, and people were like gathered around them listening to them. And they kept saying how much they were struggling. And Nate Bargatze once said, people think I'm successful. He's like, I made $18,000 last year. You know, he's like, and I'm quote unquote successful to a lot of people. He's like, I'm not. He's like, the only way you get successful is you put your head down, do as many open mics as you possibly can, become friends with people that you think are funny and that you think are good people. And before you know it, you'll look back and think, whoa, we're way further than we thought we are, than we think we are. And I literally did that. And I remember I saw Mike Lawrence in the train. I asked him, how many mics do you go to? He said, I try to do 10. So I said, fine. And in my head, I go, I'm going to do 20 a week. You try to do 10 a week, I'm going to try to do 20 a week. And I tried really hard. I mean, you know, I failed all the time at it, but I was constantly doing more than 10, and people just saw me. People saw me fixing my jokes, and people started booking me on shows, and it really, like, it's a slippery slope. It's like snowballs easily.
Right.
One person books you, and people hear about that. Other people start booking you, and now it's at the point where every once in a while I'll do a show, and people who are at that show will be like, hey, you should do my show. And that's kind of cool. That's a really cool feeling when you eventually get to that point, but it's not something you're aware of. There's no, like, you don't get a gold watch when you move up. You know what I mean? You just one day you look back.
I also don't think having that mentality of, like, how do I escape being an open micer? Like, I honestly think there's open micer and there's headliner. I don't think there's any real thing in between.
There isn't. There's no gray matter there.
Yeah.
Right.
So you know, because I constantly, you know, I had the same sort of perception of, like, especially Nate and Giannis. I'm like, oh, these guys, I want to be where they are and all that stuff. But, you know, after doing this for a while, when you go to open mics, the people who have been on TV are at the open mic. So it's like they're not, you know, they're not above it. They and if they act like they are, then they're dicks because they had to. This is what they had to go through to get to where they currently are. So I constantly see myself as a peer and not like, oh, this person is better. They've been doing it longer. They clearly have better jokes than me, and they've earned whatever they have, and I have to work just as hard to get there. But when we're in the same club, we grab the same mic, we are peers.
Yeah,
you have to. We have to work just as they have to. If they are starting with the new joke, it may not work. You know, they have to start where we start. So there's no difference. I see the hierarchy a little bit, but I don't let it affect me emotionally that much. I get jealous.
Well, you just are able to lock in and say it's not personal.
But also, it hinders your development.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main things that Mike DiStefano, who I idolized, I mean,
he was
still
great.
The funniest comic I've ever seen on stage. He said, he was like, the easiest thing is to look at someone else and what they have and be upset about it, that you don't have it. He's like, but while you're doing that, they're working on themselves. You're thinking about them. You're not working on yourself. He's like, and, you know, he literally said, fuck all else. Look at your goddamn book. He said, fuck all else. Look at your book. And he was like, keep your head down. Look at your notebook. Work on your jokes. And he was a guy who reminded me a lot of me because he didn't write. You know, he went up, he wrote on stage. And that's what's most comfortable for me. So I do that most often than not. But he was that guy, and he was just like, just shut the fuck up and look at who cares what anyone else gets. And he's like, they'll plateau. And Mark Norman said something similar to that. It was like, you know, Buzz, like, he comes and goes. The only thing that's left at the end of the day is talent. Talent's something you create. Heat is something created by somebody else. So focus on what you can create. And I was like, that's exactly what Mike DiStefano said in different words, which is like, worrying about what someone else has is a quick way to never get anywhere. You know what I mean? If you focus on you, like, not you specifically, just anyone listening or myself, I tell myself this all the time. If I focus on what I'm doing, if only I'm focusing on what I'm doing, I'm going to continuously get better, and I'm not going to worry about anybody else. I'm not going to let any of that distract me, stop me. I'm only going to let their success inspire me because I know it's a possible thing. Like when Che got a lot of success, so many people became bitter because they thought he did it quickly. And I remember saying, like, that means people want to hire comedians. Like, he didn't do anything other than comedy. He wasn't someone who had a great podcast. He wasn't someone who had, you know, a great, you know, like YouTube thing. He wasn't someone who was on TV. They put him on TV because of his stand-up. That means if you get better at stand-up, they'll put you on TV. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
No, yeah.
That economy exists now.
Exactly. And he becomes an example that he's not taking jobs from you. He just the idea that he can get that job means that you can get a job. It's a possibility.
I had this. I still have this dream of. I love the Daily Show.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I just have a dream. I would love to host the Daily Show one day. That would be a dream come true. And oddly, when like Trevor Noah got the job, there's like this. It was like this. It wasn't jealousy.
Like a how dare you?
But it was like, wow. Like, that's such a like the thing I was dreaming about. And it's like there's this guy who is a minority, kind of looks like me.
Yeah.
Really, but it's like, wow. It wasn't crazy that I had that dream.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It's always they're just gonna hire another white guy and all that stuff. But it's like, holy shit, like this is like kind of my dream. And it's like, it's not me, but it's pretty close.
It's kind of like
exactly.
you, yeah.
It's and that gives, because once it happens once, that means it can happen again.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it becomes the norm.
It sets a standard, possible standard.
Yeah. Yeah,
the
that's
potential is within reach, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. That's really good what you were saying about just put your head down and focus on just because you have I think sometimes and I've been guilty about this too is worrying about things that you don't really have control over.
It's the
like you
easiest
don't
thing
have
to do.
Yeah, you don't like it, but if you just focus on I'm trying to focus on what I can control and what I can create. That's why I started producing a show and started and I'm starting to do this. Just finding and this, like, I don't know about you guys. I don't talk like at length like this too much. So it's
All I do
really
is talk,
good.
so this is great.
But even doing this is gonna help you just grow on your own. Like when I started my podcast, I was doing comedy.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Please compliment me if you're about to compliment me.
No, because I love the idea of your podcast. So I was like, oh, I need to. I gotta. No. I.
It's okay.
Just. I am so unintentionally a jerk.
No, you weren't.
You weren't a jerk
Okay.
at all.
That was
That's,
on
yeah,
purpose.
that's Alexis. Be more a jerk. That's cool.
I saw the opening. I jumped in.
So you were saying when you started your podcast.
I was in a place, sort of in comedy and emotionally, where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what direction I'm going in. Nothing, I wasn't necessarily lost, but I was looking to, the repetition of doing stand-up and going to mics.
Yeah.
I felt like I could be doing more. And one thing I learned about myself, I never, I never talked at length into a microphone. I never really talked about myself. I remember the hardest thing to do on my podcast was do the intros by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would do them after the guest left.
Yeah.
So, and I would just talk about what the episode is going to be. And I remember I would sweat. I would be uncomfortable. I'm like, oh, my God, like, I'm talking about myself. Who am I talking to? This just seems really odd. But after, like, 10, 15 episodes of doing it, I just all of a sudden became this, like, I could be this radio guy that could intro any segment.
Yeah.
And that
you get really good at it after a while.
and it's a good skill to have, and not solely just for comedic purposes, but just as a person who's not self-conscious. It helped me get out of being self-conscious or talking about myself. Even though, there's a clear line of when it's arrogant and when you're showing humility, but it's when you know how to manipulate that in any given situation, whether you're on stage or just talking to people at a party, it's a good skill to have.
Yeah, and it
Fantastic.
Bill Burr said that his podcast, he rants for an hour, so it's a little different than yours and mine and Christian's was, but he said it gave him the feeling like he was ranting on stage for an hour. And he built parts of jokes from
doing
just
that.
talking into a mic once an hour. And he said, it's very rare that you get an hour on stage every week.
Yeah.
So for him, for Bill Burr, who's already a legend, if that's helping him, this is only my podcast is only going to help me. Christian's podcast is only going to help him. This podcast is only going to help you because this is forcing you to think on your feet, and maybe these are jokes that you do on stage in the future.
Exactly.
And there's so much cynicism, especially amongst us. We're all very cynical, and we may, how many podcasts do you have? How many like everybody's just
nothing's worse than trying to succeed.
Exactly.
In this business.
So it's like
I know, and like this, I get really upset with the snarky Facebook status. I'm just like, well, then let's not just try to create anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because Alexis, your podcast is called Show Me Your Bits, and then your podcast, Christian, was called
Offstage.
Offstage. So Alexis is you're detailing, like, you're breaking down jokes.
It's sort of a loose version of that. It's it becomes more of a conversation. But we play a bit and we break it down. Was it real? Did it really happen? And then we kind of talk about, like, a lot of times we're talking about people's, like, ability to write and how they came up with the joke as much as we are talking about the actual joke.
Oh, fantastic! And off season was is relationship advice.
Yes, off stage.
Off stage. I'm sorry.
Which is it's in the off season.
Off season is great. Right now, it's in the off season.
No, but so I would do the podcast was about relationships, and I would talk to comedians about how they dealt with relationships. Because at the time, I was single for 6 years, and I was like wondering why I was like not in any. I wasn't able to like commit, or I wasn't emotionally attached to any girls I was dating, and I was at a point where I'm like, I just need to talk. I need someone to talk to.
That's how I feel with this.
Yeah.
I just need someone to talk to.
we desperately.
What did you?
Podcasts are really just cries for
they're
help.
They're cries for help.
Giannis is
because this
my
is
favorite episode of yours too.
Oh, thanks, man.
Because this is something I really want to talk about, and then I guess, and then maybe we'll start thinking about wrapping up in a little bit. What is something that you did you find an answer to your questions about relationships from comedians? And because with this life and trying to have a relationship, I want to ask you this too, Alexis, because you're married, is maintaining a balance between comedy so that you feel like you're putting in the work and getting better, and then but also not neglecting your relationship. Because I have a problem with that, and
it's difficult.
I don't want to lose either.
Difficult.
Yeah,
it's not difficult.
You don't think so?
So what did you find?
Well, tell us, Swami, what you think.
What did you find? What did you find?
So the things I learned, I would say, from comics, and I recorded about 150 episodes, right? So I did have a lot of. It was a good
lot of content.
A lot of research. This is my life's work to some degree, right?
Uh-huh.
And I would say, from comedians specifically, the thing I learned, or the biggest sort of mistake is just like not being honest, right? And that's that's common.
That's every relationship.
That's every relationship. But comedians are able to talk about that subject in more detail and in a much more connected way than just regular people can, right?
Right.
So it is so brutally important to be honest with yourself in any relationship, because a good example was, I remember when I was in college and I had they would send your report card in the mail, and I got my report card once, and I was with my first girlfriend, and my mom handed me the report card. I opened it. I did poorly, like in my major, I was getting like B's and C's. I wasn't happy with it. I opened it, looked at it. I was like, oh, this is disgusting. She was like, oh, let me see it, and I said, no, I don't want to show you. Right? And she was like, why don't you want to show me? I'm like, I don't want to show you. And it became this huge fight. She started crying.
Right.
Because I was I was keeping something from her. I was hiding something from her, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, but in reality, what the fuck was I so ashamed of? Yeah, I didn't do well. Look, whatever. This is who I am. And I wanted to hide who I was from her, which was a poor student, right?
Yeah.
Who didn't take school very seriously or whatever. I didn't want her to think those things. And constantly when I would talk to comics, it's just like they just this repeatedly hiding something about themselves that would be detrimental to their relationship, and not it wasn't the secret that was the bad thing. It was that they didn't want
to hide it.
The actions to hide it are
the worst.
Are the things that would keep someone that loves you at arm's length.
Right.
And the biggest thing I learned is, these are my flaws, or these are the things I want. And if you don't like it, then don't be with me. And I've become a very not cold person, but very clear and very sincere about.
Which call back to what I was saying, right? You're very upfront with how you are.
Oh yeah,
right.
very much. So like when I was dating my current girl, my ex-girlfriend, I'm like, your comedy is first. Don't ever fight it. You're never gonna be first. So let's like not have that battle, because you're never gonna win. So if a woman can accept that, if your partner
can accept that, anyone can.
If your partner can accept that, like, oh wow, the person I'm with is very passionate about what they want to do in their lives, they will respect it. Even though some days it's gonna be tough, because it's like they want that attention. They feel envious to like, oh, he loves something more than me. But at the end of the day, they will respect you more. And if you budge from that passion of yours, they will take advantage because they saw that they could get in once.
Opening. Yeah.
So the more you commit to like, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what makes me me, and this is why you liked me when you met me, and you can't try to change that now. And
that's a great way to look at it.
So the more you stick to that, even if look, every day I risk my relationship. I'm like, if my girlfriend had some issue where like it's comedy or me, I'm like, don't even ask because you're not gonna win.
Yeah.
Right.
And I honestly, ever since I've kind of lived with that philosophy, all the relationships I've been in have been so much better
and smoother.
I can everything. Every kind gesture is feels genuine. There's never this like competition
or earning brownie points.
Exactly. It's like, I don't do the thing like, I could be doing comedy and I'm here with you. I'm not that guy. It's like, when I'm there, you know that I want to be there.
That you want, and you can still know that if you're there, that you're not going to suddenly fall off the face of the comedy map.
Yeah.
It's all,
which scares the hell out of me still.
It's finding a balance. I
took 3 weeks off, and a couple people asked me if I moved to LA. I had a big editing project. I was like, I'm never doing that again.
I've had a few people ask if I quit. I'm like, no, I'm just in this place. I'm just in this place a lot.
My advice, being married, having become a comedian after already being married. So I was at that point already 8 years into my relationship. I met my wife 15 years ago, was married a year or two before I got into stand-up. It was easier because it was a choice from both of us for me to start it. So it was a decision we both made together. But one of the things that I think I've worked on the most is saying, especially when I decided I was going to try to do 20 mics a week, I sat my wife down and I said, look, in order for me to become successful at this, I need to focus more on this. Unfortunately, this is something that happens at night. That's when you're home. So I am going to do this. This doesn't mean I don't want to be with you. This means that I want to be with you more in the future. So I'm going to work really hard now so that I have that, so she could come on the road with me and do those things with me so we can spend more time together. I said, but, and I wanted to make sure that, this is going to change the dynamic of our relationship, but it doesn't change how we feel about each other. And I'm going to make a concerted effort to make the time we spend together more meaningful. And I think that's the best advice I can give to anyone who's in a relationship where comedy obviously comes first. And my wife has said, I've told her, I'm married to comedy and cheating on it with my wife. That's how it has to be. You know what I mean? At this level, in order for me to succeed, it has to be that level of commitment, or else I'll always do stand-up and never succeed at it. You know what I mean? It'll always be there. It'll be worse for our relationship if I don't do this now. And what I've told everyone is make the time you do have special. So I don't need to go to a mic or two before a set like I had to when I first started.
Right.
To be comfortable on stage, I had to do like 1 or 2 sets, get the jokes out, and then do a show.
Right.
Because the show was so important. Now I don't necessarily have to do that, so I'll take more time. I'll plan some like things to go do in Brooklyn or in Queens or something outside of, we live in the Upper West. So like we won't do things right around our apartment. Like I'll find a new restaurant. I'll find like a store she likes. I'll do those things so she knows I'm making an effort to still have like some type of regular relationship, and we'll spend all day with each other. And then, I'm out at night doing stand-up. But also it helps that she's a photographer, so she has things she can do.
Right.
So the rule is, if I have a microphone in my hand, she has a camera in her hand. I mean, it's obviously a loose rule, but it's helped her become a better, or certainly a much more effective or a much more productive photographer, having that idea in mind. So she's like, I'm not going to just sit here and watch TV while you're gone. I'm going to do something else too. And that's helped. So like some friends have been like, oh, it's good. I got to get my girl a hobby. I'm like, a hobby's not going to do it. If she has a passion, you should encourage her to follow that passion as much as they're encouraging you to follow yours. Yeah. And that was huge with me, with her having been a photographer, because she understood what I was going through because she had been doing that for so long. So that helps.
Yeah, one of the things.
Wow, that is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love that.
Like, just to piggyback on that, one of the things that was always very, very important to me was dating someone whose relationship wasn't the most important thing in their life. Whenever I would date girls, when I was the main focus of their life and the person that they wanted to make happy or please, I'm like, that is not the girl for me. I can't, because you're never gonna get that reciprocated, and you're gonna resent me for it. So have a thing you love doing, And please be passionate about it, because that is the only way there's going to be any real balance, and one of us is not going to hate each other for like just loving something.
That's
right.
It won't work if they don't have something else that they're passionate about. If you're the thing they're passionate about, then come sit at open mics and shows with me every night. And you're not going to want to do that. So why don't you go do something? Look in the back of your mind and think about what did you want to do when you were a kid? Luckily, my wife was a great photographer the entire time we were married. I never understood it until I started doing stand-up, and I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. And I encouraged her to do that.
Wow, that's really fun. That's really good. That makes a lot of sense, and you might say have saved my relationship.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
That's excellent. Well,
this was a lot of fun, dude.
I thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I appreciate you guys talking to me. Before we get out real quick, I'll do another plug for it too. But what's your you guys have a web series?
Yes, it's
that
like
you do
like a podcast, the web series. We've got some videos up. It's awesome. We're the Cooligans.
Feels good, right?
Cooligans.
The Cooligans.
Yeah,
so we've all heard of soccer hooligans and how they like to fight and stuff, and we're just too smooth for that. So we're Cooligans.
I like it.
We're just afraid of getting punched.
Yeah,
mostly.
I don't want to get punched. I'm too pretty.
Yeah.
I'll ruin the moneymaker.
But yes,
Exactly.
it's a soccer YouTube channel and podcast, and and we try to be comedians who do soccer related content.
Yeah, so if you don't understand a lot about soccer, you'll still laugh.
Yeah, it's just
if you like soccer but you haven't laughed a lot, watch it and you will. And you know, we talk a lot about NYCFC because all three of us are
all three of us.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about that, but we're going to get into a lot more world soccer stuff, and we talk about world soccer on our podcast. So if you guys are EPL fans, La Liga fans, listen in. I think you're going to laugh. I'm sort of the crazy emotional one.
Yeah, I'm more
reserved.
The logical reserved
logical
guy.
I would say logical. Yeah.
Yeah. You're the one that's like
coming to an
thinking.
end.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What's your team in La Liga?
I Atleti is the closest thing I have to a team because I just love Simeone, their coach or manager. But if I had to choose between Barca and Real, I'm more of a Real fan. Only because they're so glitzy that pisses everyone off. And I just like that about them, They're like the dude who's like, yeah, I have a Lamborghini, and yeah, I'm going to use it to go to the supermarket. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's that guy. I love that. And I love Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, he's great. He's really, really good at playing soccer.
Yeah, he's very good. He's great at a lot of things.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I had one thing I would say about him is that he's very good at playing soccer.
Yeah. That's usually how I compliment people. It's just like they're very good at what they've decided to do.
Yeah. It's a nice way to compliment them because you can't be wrong.
You cannot.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, guys. And if you ever need a big dork to walk through the background wearing a custom jersey, I have a couple.
Nice. Cool.
So awesome. So excellent. Thank you. So, guys, Alexis, Christian, thank you for talking to me. I really appreciate it, guys.
Thank you,
but
dude.
thanks
This
for
was a
having
blast.
us,
Thanks
man.
for having us.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you checking in with us this week. That's Alexis Guerreros and Christian Polanco. Really insightful guys, really good dudes, and a lot of gracious advice that they provided me, because it's kind of hard when you're new to ask questions of people who are further along, and it was very nice of them that they were able to, so gracious with their time. And please check them out on Cooligans, and I'll have links in the description, so just check out the Cooligans TV on YouTube, and then you can of course follow them on Twitter, and then you can also check out my website. I'll have links for everyone you heard today at willcareyisfunny.com, and I will see you next week between awesome and disaster. Thank you, and have a great week.